Hello, I'm Svitek, 360 Creative Coach, and welcome to my vlog, where it is both my mission and my simultaneous pleasure to highlight my creative journey in hopes of inspiring you and giving you specific takeaway, all with the intent that your journey can be at least a little bit easier. Now, before I fully dive into everything, I would love to take the opportunity to invite you to subscribe if you haven't already. That way you get all the various episodes and lessons that I put out right when I put them out. Thank you if you just did, and thank you if you already were. It truly does mean a lot to me. I hope it does to you. So let's talk about this past week. A big portion of it was spent on sort of recalibrating the top line view, right? So what I mean by this is that I've been working on the development of my latest feature film project. And as part of that, we're getting ready all the various pitch materials. So pitch deck, proof of concept, the script, all kinds of things, right? And as we approach the deadline for when we start pitching, we have to take a top line view of like, okay, where are we at? And, what needs to get done when in order to have this all moving forward, because we're going to start pitching in November and there's a specific event we're going to, hence why the deadline is kind of very specific in that regard. And so we essentially have to work backwards from that. And part of looking at it in November, we're essentially looking at October as the outreach month, scheduling meetings, reaching out to folks that we may know who might be interested or at least might be able to help us, things of that nature, right? And so it's kind of like the business month, right? Whereas up until now, we've been working on the creative and, we essentially want to have that done so we can focus on that. So overall, me and the team, we looked at it, we're like, okay, what needs to be done by when? Like, what's the absolute hard deadline that by hell or high water, this needs to be done? So, we laid all that stuff out and so forth. And yeah, now by hell or high water, we have something to shoot for. And it was just kind of like a good recalibration because, for the most part, it's kind of like one of those things, the time it takes to do something is equal to the time you allot it, right? So, while we wanted some of the stuff earlier, we knew that we didn't necessarily have to get everything done and so forth. So now it's like, okay, these are the hard deadlines. We have to meet these deadlines. And, usually you end up doing that once you set those benchmarks. One of the exciting things that I'm kind of moving along on is the pitch deck, which we have been working on for a while. And we had a pitch deck that I had designed about a year ago, and it just needed to be updated. And so, for the past few months, we've been kind of just slowly keeping tabs of notes and what we want to update and change and so forth. But why we didn't pull the trigger on really going after until now is because now we are starting to have the character designs, the animations from this film completed, so we can utilize screenshots and those elements within this pitch deck for our animated feature film, right? So that's one big aspect that's coming along and so forth. So it's all these different elements that have been very, let's say, theoretical for quite a while now are really starting to come in and materialize, and that's exciting. It really is. One of the things that I think about, though, too, is a big thing that's kind of on our plate, or at least certainly, involved me for a good chunk of time in this past week, was our prep for LA Comic-Con. So we got approved to be a panel at LA Comic-Con, which is from October 4th to the 6th of October. And our panel is the animation process from concept to screen. And so my team and I will go there and present essentially our experience and try to give as much takeaway for how people can get started in animation, like what that looks like, the pros and cons, and so forth, and our process and how that might differ from other processes and whatnot. Now, we only have 50 minutes to pitch, or present rather, and so in that respect, it sounds like a lot of time, but it's actually not a lot of time, and certainly to cram in everything that we want, it's just not nearly enough. But one of the things I always like to do when I do these sort of sessions, let's say, is to create a rundown, a topic sheet, and a resource guide, like that even if we don't get to all the things, that someone can essentially download from a link. It's just a PDF, and they get all the various stuff of like, okay, well, what are some podcasts I could be listening to if I want to learn about animation? What are some books? What are some documentaries? What's like the quintessential viewing list? Both TV shows, movies, and what is the process like spelled out? Because in further detail than we're going to be able to highlight. So all those things, I try to make sure that I put in, and my team is excited for it, but they're also a little bit nervous of like, okay, well, what are we talking? They're like, well, we're not animation experts, and I'm like, that's in a way, in an odd way, kind of the point. It's like, I want you to talk about your experience, like us doing this, and what you've learned and so forth, and whatever else, and kind of how we're navigating this, and that there really is no wrong way to do it, as long as you do it with respect, and obviously not heinous and toxic and all those things. So I'm excited. Our panel, by the way, is October 5th, which is Saturday at 11 a.m. So that's LA Comic-Con. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. Usually I like to have a preliminary rundown, and then I kind of start to get involved over time, like, closer to the actual event, where I really start to solidify things. But I felt, to put my team at ease of, what they would and could be talking about, I wanted to make sure that, okay, let me just do the bulk of the work now, so that way I can, put them at ease. Because a lot of, in fact, all of my panel pretty much, they've attended Comic-Cons, they've seen panels, but they've not been part of a panel. And so this is a newer experience for them. And I'll never forget, I remember the first time I did it with a group there. This was 3 years ago, because this is my third time in a row that I'll be attending LA Comic-Con. And the first time we did it, one of my friends and collaborators, Khalil Abdelrahim, he said afterwards that it's amazing all the stuff people wanted to know from him, and how like he takes his knowledge for granted. And that's what I'm trying to instill in my team at the moment of, no, I know you might not think like you're not Hayao Miyazaki or Shinkai or whoever in the animation space, but that doesn't negate the wealth of information that you do have, right? You don't have to pretend to be anything that you're not. Just share the things that you do know based on your experience of us doing this, because there's so much to be able to share. And as I said, we're not going to be able to even like barely scratch the surface of all these things. So I'm looking forward to that. And normally I moderate the panels, but this year I felt like switching it up, where I got my friend Candace Cruz, who's a talented host as well as an actress, to moderate instead. Number one, because she's a host. Number two, because she knows the acting side and she knows filmmaking in general. She's passionate about it, so she can, connect those two. And then thirdly, the reason why I even thought of imploring someone to do it instead of myself was because, unlike years in the past where, yes, we talked about topics, this one is almost like a case study where, all of us are there talking about this particular project. And it felt odd to, be the one to kind of move that ball forward. So I think Candace will do, it will feel more natural to have somebody else outside of the project to be able to move that along. Plus, because we want to have, like, the other thing that now that the rundown is overall done, I got to pull various elements, from the pitch deck, from the proof of concept, and just also create new slides to have and be able to present. So we have AV capabilities, and so I want to make sure that, as we're talking about some of the stuff, that obviously it's very visual, right? So just even a simple aspect of, okay, if I go over the animation process, starting with, okay, you storyboard it, you create animatics, then you have layouts, key poses, and all the way to the finished product. I want that step-by-step guide to be there so people can see it, right? It's much easier than just hearing it. And then also, as we kind of dissect each part of it, they can see a visual reference, right? And so, A, I have to put that together, but B, by having someone else moderate the panel, it will allow me to, I'll run the tech essentially, and that way, Candace can be focused on moving the whole thing along and asking the right questions, and I can be focused on giving an answer, as well as, making sure that the visuals match what the hell we're talking about. And one of the things that I want to do is I've asked the team that's not in LA, that's not going to be coming for Comic-Con LA, to put together, just kind of like a video of the things that they've learned in the process. And I told them, like, hey, record something for 3 minutes and I'll chop it down. Like if I had everyone, kept their video at 3 minutes, A, it might be a little bit boring, but B, even with just three of us, 3 outside people, let's say, that's 9 minutes already of our 50-minute allotted time slot. So, I did that so that way I can get more than needed, and I can trim them down to a minute each, right? And almost make it like a super fast cut, right? And, the 3-minute videos I can still recycle and post as a separate thing as well and all that. So that's kind of the thinking going into it. So yeah, a lot of kind of prep for that, and in some ways it might come off as a distraction, because it's like, okay, we've got all this other stuff to focus on, and now we're, there's a lot of stuff, a lot of energy going into the preparation of Comic-Con LA. But it's good because it gives us practice talking about this. It gets some awareness out. And as we head into November, we're obviously going to be pitching it. And so this isn't exactly that, but it nudges us towards that. It gets us more comfortable with talking about the movie and being able to summarize it for an audience and so forth. So it's very exciting. And again, it's still different because at the end of the day, the Comic-Con panel isn't meant to be this aspect where we're selling the movie in the sense like, hey, come watch our movie, this and that. Like, it's meant to be very educational, but using our experience as the way we communicate those lessons. I'm very much, as you may probably know, based on stuff that I put out in terms of these episodes, I try to be very educational for the benefit of others, right? And so that's what this panel really aims to do. Now, when we talk about the big deadlines, a major deadline that I really want to hit is for a polish of the script where it's one that we can send off and others can read. Like, sure, it's not going to be perfect. There's going to be changes and stuff like that. But for the most part, this is going to be the movie. And we've been revising and revising. And so the goal is to have it at the end of September. And, I spoke last vlog that we did like 3 sessions, 2 hours each, where we really refleshed the outline. So we did 2 sessions this week. The first day, the first 2-hour session, we got through like barely 1 bullet point. We finished that and started into the next like bullet point. But it was a major sort of breakthrough, and it really kind of helped focus some stuff earlier, some stuff later. And then the second go around, we kind of got as close to the end as possible. Like, we started to really gain momentum and whatnot, but I think the truest, we got to the climax. And the thing of it is, we know all the elements that have to go into it and what needs to happen. But it's also kind of seeing, it's implementing the notes that have been thought out up until that point that will really help assess, okay, what are the finer specifics? So right now we can give it the bigger bullet points and make those a little bit more specific than what has been in the past, but it'll sort of come as we start to see it. So the overall task for me this week is to really take what we've done, put it into the script, and essentially finish the script. So my idea is I'm gonna take everything that we've talked about, which gets me up until the climax. So I'll make that as good as I can, finish out the script as tight as I can, then read what I've done, go through everything one more time, finesse it as much as I can, and then the team will read it next week, and hopefully it's good. Now, and they'll obviously offer up revisions and so forth. The good news is, by the time we met for this last session, I had managed to roll up and implement all the changes that we've discussed as far as the outline. So all that's rolled up. Now I just need to do the last session, which is essentially the last 30 pages of the script. So that'll take a few days, and then as I said, I'll reread it, and hopefully it's good, and then we can kind of at least call it sendable. And the reason why I've been kind of pushing for it, because in theory, we could save it till November, but I want to focus really on October for outreach. And so I want to be done as much as with the creative that I need to do as possible. And also I want to use October to reach out to named talents that we might want to attach for this movie. So that way going into November when we start pitching, we could show a letter of interest from, X, Y, and Z actor. Or potentially a producer, whoever, right? So that way there's some gravitas with it. And people are like, oh, okay, so not only do you have a pitch deck, you have a script, you have this proof of concept, you have an animation team, so you've got momentum, and you've got interest from reputable people. Okay. That puts people out of comfort. So that's really what we're going after and whatnot. So that's kind of the long and short of it. Everything else, creatively, other stuff that I may want to be working on, stuff like that, is very much on hold. This is now the big thing, fully focused on that. A couple of other things not related to the creative stuff, but as you may recall, a couple months ago at this point, definitely a couple months, I think this was back in July, I talked about how the IRS sent me this form saying that I owed some taxes based on 1099s that they'd received and so forth. I'm like, the hell you did? What? And long story short, I was like, okay, well, if I owe this money, can I see the 1099s? They couldn't send me, so it was a whole rigmarole just to get the 1099s, to be able to look at them, be like, okay, well, these aren't mine, so I don't owe this money, and then, being able to present the case and send it back to them. So it's a whole process just to tell the IRS, I don't actually owe this money. This is not me. I did not earn this. You are incorrect. Well, the good news is, as annoying as it was, I have been cleared. I received a letter saying that, okay, yep, you do not, in fact, owe any of this money. And I'm like, great, awesome. So, yeah, all is well that ends well, I guess, even though it was torturous throughout the whole process. The other aspect I wanted to kind of just share is that there's this movie called Layover. And there's a lot of movies actually called Layover, but this one, it had a festival run in 2014, but it technically released 2015. It's by Joshua Caldwell, and it's this movie about a Parisian woman who is flying to Singapore because that's where her boyfriend is. Like, they met in Paris, but because of his job, he got relocated to Singapore, and she's on her way there, and it's the sense that her boyfriend is going to propose to her once she gets there, sort of thing. But she has a layover in LAX, so LA. However, the connecting flight gets delayed. And so it gives her like this moment of pause for the night until, the next day when her plane is able to fly her to Singapore. And so she kind of gets to think about her life of, is this actually what I want? Like, what do I want out of life? And it's this really charming movie that I stumbled upon thanks to, I listened to the Filmcast, which is a podcast about movies. They, each week they review a movie. They also talk about TV shows and movies that they've been watching. Maybe they'll do some news as well and stuff like that. And it's a podcast I've been listening to, at this point, probably a decade, if not more. But anyway, they had kind of done a retrospect of an episode that they did a while ago, and in so doing, they mentioned this movie from 2014. And it seemed very intriguing. One of the things that was intriguing about it was that it was a well-made movie, but they made it for $6,000. And the fact that, so it's a Parisian woman, she's at LAX, and blah blah. I was like, okay, this is something I want to check out. Like, if they're saying that it's good and it's made for $6,000, I want to see this thing. And it's very spiritual to me in that way because, I had made my first movie in LA at Grand Central Market, primarily. And, and we also shot around downtown LA and other parts and whatever else. And, the budget was fairly similar and whatnot. So I wanted to kind of compare and contrast. And I have to say, very well done. I really enjoyed this movie. You wouldn't really be able to tell that it was made for $6,000. And I feel really akin to it because my second movie, Finding Love in Bogota, that was kind of a similar sort of rethinking of one's life, just done in the elements of it were completely different. Mine was about two sets of American tourists, one being a bachelorette party, one being two male friends kind of, trying to rekindle their friendship, if you will. And then they bump into each other and, kind of it goes from there. So wildly different stories ultimately, but kind of both exploring the same, in a way, anxieties, right? And so I was very curious to see that movie, and it was really well done. And I started listening to any sort of interviews I could about how they made it and stuff like that. So it's all general, having done it, right? It's generally stuff that I knew and was already doing and stuff like that. But it's just always great to, collect people of the same mindset, if you will, and even though I don't know the director or whatever, but I just have a tremendous respect for what he was able to accomplish and whatnot. So, yeah, I figured I'd share it. So that's Layover. I watched it on Tubi. It's free on Tubi. It just has a couple of commercials. By the way, my movies are available on Tubi as well. I mentioned Finding Love in Bogota, my first one being Love Market. So yeah, I just want to highlight that because, as you can probably tell, if you've been, with me for any part of the journey, making a movie is very arduous, right? It doesn't matter your budget, doesn't matter how good it comes out. It takes a tremendous amount of effort. And so, especially indie movies, and I mean, that's like a no budget type of movie, right? For it to come out as good as it did, and I think for the right audience, it could be just as enjoyable, right? Like if you're into sort of foreign language drama type movies, I think this will be up your alley. So it's really good, and I love supporting stuff that's good, and I love promoting it because it's well deserved. So I wanted to talk about that. Anyway, that's kind of what's up in my world. As always, feel free to ask questions about anything that I talked about, anything that you might want me to talk about in the future. Happy to do so. Excuse me. Happy to do so. Comment down below or hit me up on social media at Svitek. As always, I truly, truly do appreciate you. And if you do happen to be at LA Comic-Con, even if you can't make the panel and watch us, hopefully, just come say hi afterwards, before. It'd be amazing to see you. Anyway, thank you so much, and I'll see you next time.